Hello everyone, it's Stephen Bedard, and I want to ask the question, how many apostles were there? Well, that's obvious, 12, 12 apostles. Everybody knows there was 12 apostles, but is that really the limit of the apostles? Well, we're going to take a closer look at that. We actually find in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, at the beginning of that chapter, Paul quotes an early Christian creed. So this is a creed that is earlier than his first letter to the Corinthians, where he is listing the witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus. And it's a very interesting passage. But what I want to focus on here is that he actually separates the 12 and the apostles. He sees them as two different groups. Now, they are definitely related. And basically, the way it is that all of the 12 were apostles, but not all the apostles were the 12. The 12 were an inner circle within the apostles, just as we have an inner circle within the 12. We have Peter, James, and John. Then we have the 12, and then there is a larger group of apostles. So there is more than 12. So how many were there? Well, I want to count it out with you, and I'm going to use my fingers. However, I only have so many fingers, so we're not going to count the 12 right now, or we're going to add on to the 12. The 12 are going to be assumed, okay? I think we can agree on that. And then we're going to look to see who else there is. Well, it's pretty obvious at the beginning of Acts that we have a replacement for Judas, and that's Matthias. And so there we go. We have our 13th apostle. So there we go. We're up to 13. Well, we also have the Apostle Paul. Paul makes it very clear in his letters that he is an apostle. In fact, he fights for that because there probably were some people who discounted his role as an apostle, partially because he wasn't there at the resurrection of Jesus. He wasn't one of the followers of Jesus during his earthly ministry. But Paul was clearly called to be an apostle by the risen Christ on the road to Damascus. So Paul is very convinced that he is an apostle, and he seems to have been accepted by the majority of the church anyways as being apostles. So there we go. We're up to 14. How many other apostles do we have? Well, Barnabas in Acts 14:14 is described as an apostle. So there we go. Now we're up to 15 apostles. The next one is a little bit more controversial, for some people anyways. In Romans 16:7, there is mention of two people as apostles, Andronicus and Junia. And this is controversial for some people because the name Junia is a female name. Now, some Bible translations tried to deal with this by turning it into a male name because, of course, you can't have a female apostle. That just wouldn't do. So they changed it into a male name. However, that's not really good translation. So modern translations now, I think, were pretty universal. Will refer to this person as Junia, as a female. Now, some other translations try to get around it by saying that Andronicus and Junia weren't outstanding among the apostles in terms of being outstanding apostles, but rather they were seen as outstanding by the apostles, because again, you can't have a female apostle. Well, if you're not against female apostles, and if you take the scripture passage by what it seems to be saying Andronicus and Junia were both apostles. So that's two more. So there we go. We have 5 more apostles, bringing us to a number of 17. So are there any other apostles? Well, there's also James. Now, I don't mean James, the brother of John, who's one of the 12. He's already counted. We're talking about James, the half-brother of Jesus, who became the leader of the Jerusalem church, and Paul refers to him as being an apostle in Galatians 1:19. So there we got 6 extra. That brings us to 18. And then we have 1 Thessalonians 1:1 and 2:6, which seem to be saying that Timothy and Silas were apostles. Now, there's some discussion about that as to if that's what the passage is actually saying. But it really seems to be that Timothy and Silas were apostles. Definitely, they seem to be on the same level as Barnabas. So I think that we can accept them as that. So that is 2 more apostles. And then in Philippians 2:25, we have Epaphroditus. I'm not good with names, so I apologize to you about that. But Epaphroditus is described as apostle. Now, if you go to Philippians 2:25, probably your translation will say messenger, but the actual Greek is apostle. So he seems to be an apostle as well. And then in 1 Corinthians 4:6-9, Paul seems to suggest that Apollos was an apostle. So that brings us to 10. I am so glad that we're stopping here because I have no more fingers. So going back to math, 10 plus 12 is 22. So we seem to have 22 named apostles in the New Testament. However, there actually is one more, and a very important one. In Hebrews 3, verse 1, Jesus is called an apostle. He is the one who is sent. That's what apostle means, a sent one. Now, of course, Jesus is not an apostle in the same way that Peter, James, or Paul, or Timothy, or any of these other people were apostles. He was sent from the Father. But that word apostle is used for Jesus, and so we need to accept that as well. But when we're looking at just purely followers of Jesus, it looks like the New Testament is describing not 12 apostles, but 22 apostles. There you go. I hope you found that interesting, and please visit me at my websites, stephenjbedard.com, and also the History of Christianity podcast.com. Thank you, and God bless.